Module number 21, Your Mind Plus. Shared energy, limit your exposure, expand your potential. Bioenergy. Nadim Aslam said, pull a thread here, and you'll find it's attached to the rest of the world. Bioenergy. Did it ever happen to you to feel a bad vibe when you were with another person, as if this person was absorbing your energy? There is scientific evidence now that it's not all in our head. Everything is energy is one of the main axioms of science, and human beings are no strangers to energy transformations. An interesting study was conducted at the University of Bielefeld, Germany, which shows that plants can absorb energy from other plants. Olivia Bader-Lee, a physician and therapist, followed the results of this investigation. The science that studies the behavior of energy in living things is called bioenergetics. Dr. Olaf Kruse conducted research in green algae. Not only does the algae engage in photosynthesis, it also has an alternative source of energy. It can draw it from other plants. The research findings were released in an online journal, Nature Communications. According to Bader-Lee, our bodies are like sponges absorbing energy that is all around us. This is exactly why there are people who feel uncomfortable when they are in a certain group with a mix of energy and emotions. When energy studies become more advanced in the coming years, we will eventually see this translated to human beings as well, stated Bader-Lee. The human organism is very much like a plant. It draws needed energy to feed emotional states, and this can essentially energize cells or cause increase in cortisol and catabolize cells depending on the emotional trigger. Bader-Lee suggests that the field of bioenergy is now ever evolving, and that studies on the plant and animal world will soon translate and demonstrate what energy metaphysicians have known all along, that humans can heal each other simply through energy transfer just as plants do. Humans can absorb and heal through other humans, animals, and any part of nature. That's why being around nature is often uplifting and energizing for so many people, she concluded. Prevent energy drains. Here are 5 energy tools used to clear your space and prevent energy drains while releasing people's energy. Stay centered and grounded. If you are centered within your spiritual center, instead of ego or analyzer, you'll sense when something has moved into your space. If you're fully grounded, you'll easily release other people's energy and emotions with your intention. Be in a state of non-resistance. What we resist sticks. If you feel uncomfortable around a certain person or in a group, move into a state of non-resistance by imagining that your body is clear and translucent like clear glass or water. This way, if someone throws some invalidation at you, it will pass right through you. Own your personal space. We each have an energy surrounding our body. If we don't own this space, we're vulnerable to foreign energy entering it. Become aware of your boundaries, about an arm's length away from your body all the way around, above and below, as a way to own your personal space. Taking on energy from others. Intuition and perceptiveness are some of the core dimensions of being intense. Many emotionally gifted people are also endowed with a high level of empathy, and when this is combined with emotional strengths and velocity, it can seem as though every day you are fluttering through, not just on your own, but also other people and even the world's feelings. A hyper-empathetic person is someone who is extremely sensitive to the emotions and energy of people, animals, and to the elements in the environment. They are acutely aware of the feeling tones, nuance, subtext, and energy current of their surroundings. Their senses are so acute that they feel as though they absorb others' emotions beyond their conscious control. In its extremity, this ability can even seem mystical. The term empath has become popular in recent years, often used to describe someone with a higher than normal degree of empathy, to the point of being an emotional sponge. They do not have the filters most people do, and they absorb other people's stress and feelings into their bodies. Despite mounting attention to the concept, the existing definition for empath tend to be inconclusive, fuzzy, and often not very useful. Energy transfer. We've looked at the scientific explanation of energy transfer, asking what it means to absorb, take in, or feel into other people's emotions, how it happens, and why some of us seem to do it more frequently and intensely than others. While we draw on research and ideas from the scientific to the esoteric realm, some of which are more controversial than others, not all quoted views reflect my own. The general assumption that we take on others' feelings, problems, and anger is generally accepted. And anger is generally accepted. The purpose of the scientific backing is to help us keep an open mind. There can be little growth for us if we only allow ourselves exposure to the known and familiar. These theories are not mutually exclusive. Just like the answer to the perennial question of nature versus nurture, it is probably somewhere in between. The categorization is arbitrary and simply a way to help us organize information. Please use your discernment to take away what is useful and leave behind the rest. Are you an empath? A. When you are among a group of people, you feel as though you absorb the energy in the room. B. Even when the reason is not apparent, you have a strong sense of knowing that there is more to the story than meets the eye. C. When a friend is upset, you feel it too. You feel others' emotions in your body and mind as though they belong to you. D. You can read between the lines, beyond the obvious, and under the surface of what is going on in a social situation. E. Sometimes you are emotionally drained by crowds and require time alone to rejuvenate after being in a group. F. Your nerves get frayed by noise, smells, or excessive talking, especially when that is going on and is not engaging for you. G. You see through hypocrisies and lies and incongruous affects you so much that you feel compelled to point out the truths or to take actions. H. You easily or automatically take on the mannerisms, accents, and body language of others without consciously doing so. I. At work or in relationships, you feel you need to learn how to say no without feeling guilty, or to set more explicit boundaries to preserve your inner resources. J. As you tend to take on so much, sometimes you are afraid of becoming swamped by the needs of others or feeling engulfed by friendships or intimate relationships. The definition of an empath is feeling what others feel, from the scientific to the esoteric. More and more people are becoming aware that humanity has reached a critical stage in its evolution. What we see now in our environmental, economical, and political spheres reveals a pattern of civilization collapse. Instinctively, we know that our materialistic and self-serving worldview has reached its limit. Our highly fragmented, superficial culture have little to help us feed our soul's cry, and the answers we desperately need lie in our interconnectedness as human. Catch a feeling. Psychology. The idea that people can catch others' feelings is not new. As Carl Jung observed decades ago, emotions are contagious. In psychology, this phenomenon is known as precisely that, emotional contagion. The term describes our innate tendency to take on the sensory, physiological, and affective states of other people. Studies have found that as social beings, we unconsciously mimic the expressions of others to the point of actually feeling the same thing. In doing so, two or more people converge emotionally. Emotional contagion does not equate empathy. Emotional contagion is fast, unconscious, and automatic, and relies mostly on the nonverbal communication that bypasses our conscious mind. While empathy, what some psychologists call mentalizing or perspective taking, involves a more sophisticated cognitive process. It requires you to stand in one's perspective, while at the same time put yourself in another person's shoes and understand their emotions. In a nutshell, emotional contagion is primitive, automatic, implicit, and uncontrollable, while empathy takes more work. Stephen Schwartz said, "You think the only people who are the people who look and think like you. But if you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you'll learn things you never knew. The benefits of empathy." Some scholars define emotional contagion as more primitive form of empathy, but it is also what separates most people from psychopaths. Psychopaths are capable of the cognitive element of empathy, such as perspective taking, but the element of being immediately impacted by another's feelings on a feeling level is missing. Although emotional contagion is a universal phenomenon, there are individual differences in our susceptibility to it. In each interaction, there is an energy dynamic that determines which person's brain will more forcefully draw the others into its emotional orbit. The senders among us can infect others more powerfully with their emotions, while the catchers are more likely to be infected with the emotions. Studies found that senders tend to be more charismatic, expressive, entertaining, and score high on dominance, and the catchers are more prone to being attentive to the emotional details in their surroundings. Besides our natural temperaments, other factors such as the setting, moods, and attention also determine how much we are affected by emotional contagion. For instance, when there are power differences in a group, such as in a work situation, it is usually the most influential person that sends emotions, setting the tone for everyone else. When the team leader is in a positive mood, the group picks up on that feeling and their performance is enhanced. If the leader is in a negative mood, the group catches it and their performance suffers. Emotional contagion may be a part of empathy, but catching others' feelings doesn't automatically translate into healthy and functional empathy. If we only have unregulated emotional contagion, all we do is sponging up others' feelings, we can quickly get overwhelmed and burnt out. In the long run, we may even shut down, numb ourselves, and dissociate from people altogether to protect ourselves. To be effectively and healthily empathetic, we ought to develop skills such as context observation and emotional regulation to move us beyond emotional contagion. Perspective, mirror neurons. In recent years, scientists have discovered a set of neurons in our brain known as mirror neurons that have furthered our understanding of empathic tendencies. Mirror neurons allow us to feel into other people, not through conceptual reasoning, but direct neurological activities. These cells create a neurophysical link between us and other people. So when we observe someone else doing something, the same regions in our brain which would have been involved become activated had we been doing it ourselves. Empathy happens when this applies to our feelings. Just seeing another person's emotions would automatically activate the same somatic response in us. Mirror neurons are present in us from birth. We know this when we see one crying infant setting off a wave of crying in the hospital ward. Neurophysiological findings have confirmed that humans empathize with each other to different degrees, and it's likely that people who are hyper-empathic have more and more active mirror neuron system when compared to the norm. The mirror neuron system can be over or underactive depending on a myriad of factors. One extreme example of having an overactive mirror system is a condition known as mirror touch synesthesia. Synesthesia is where sensations that normally are experienced separately get blended. In mirror touch synesthesia, when another person gets touched, the synesthete feels the touch on their own body. On the other end of the spectrum, some suggest that underactivity of the mirror neuron system is linked to autism. Despite its hype, the research in this area is relatively new. Theories around the role mirror neurons play in the human condition remains controversial. If you are interested, a book titled A Myth of Mirror Neurons captures a lot of these discoveries. Adapting. In psychoanalysis, the term ego boundary is used to describe our emotional and identity distinction between self and others. Boundaries of a young psyche are extremely permeable. From birth, most of us read the world around us to figure out how we need to be and what we need to do. Through infant studies, we know that from as early as 6 weeks, we start to mirror our parents' face and emulate their emotions. Individuals who have grown up in chaotic childhood environments might have developed a hyper-empathic ability as a way to survive. In environments that are unpredictable, our brains will adapt by extracting patterns from information. Children at risk are extremely attuned to the micro changes in others' energy levels, facial expressions, and tone of voice for self-protection because they have trained themselves to pick up on the earliest, most subtle signs of their caregiver's outrage or the bully's attack. Empathic intuition developed out of a precarious environment is often coupled with a sensory high alert and anxiety. This state, known as hypervigilance, is a result of the neural pathways that have been formed in the brain. The traumatized empaths are wired to constantly scan the environment for anything or anyone that could be a potential threat. Even realistically, as grown-ups, they are no longer facing any danger. Whenever there are changes in an environment, an atmosphere of a room, or the emotional tone of other people, they still have an automatic and visceral fight or flight reaction. They'll feel tightening of the chest, increased heartbeat, and a feeling that something ought to be done. In the long run, such physiological stress could lead to symptoms such as adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue, and depression. Individuals who have grown up with intact boundaries can have an internalized sense of safety and a capacity to set appropriate limits with the world. Someone whose life was repeatedly violated by chaos, however, have not developed the ability to filter external stimuli. With a blurred line between their inner and outer experiences, they are able to rapidly attune to others and the environment, but at the same time they feel swamped or invaded by other people's energy and emotions. Boundaries and independence. As part of a healthy childhood development, children ought to grow out of the initial symbiotic state with their parent and forge their path towards independence. However, either due to traumas in the family or limitations in their emotional resources, some parents are not able to let go and would overtly or subtly limit their child's need to separate from them. Some parents may have a fear of not being needed or of being abandoned by their children. They may, subtly, through their outpouring emotions and behaviors, pass on these messages. Don't go, I cannot survive without you, or don't ever leave me. The result of this dynamic is enmeshment, a relationship in which two or more people are overly involved with and reactive to one another. In an enmeshed family, the boundaries between family members are blurred or too permeable. There is a spillover happening from one person to another, where an emotional change in one person can quickly reverberate and escalate throughout the entire household. The parent may not be consciously aware of what they are doing, but merely repeating the cycle that had played out in their own childhood. A child growing up in an enmeshed household never really have the opportunity to develop intact boundaries or to draw the line between themselves and others. They are used to being intensely affected by or even feel responsible for others' feelings. As adults, they struggle to tell the difference between their feelings and those they care about, or they may feel the compulsion to rescue someone from their negative feelings. We often hear empaths sharing how they attract emotional vampires or energy suckers into their lives. While this is not a language used by the scientific community, it is not unlikely that a naturally empathic person can draw in others to use their gift for a kind of psychological discharge or healing. A concept in psychoanalytic psychology known as projective identification can help us understand this phenomenon. Projective identification is an unconscious mental strategy in which a person discharges feelings and qualities that they reject in themselves onto and into others. You know you have been the recipient of projective identification when you suddenly feel seized by an intense feeling that comes from someone else. Biologists have long suggested that our other-regarding instinct is what separates us from other animals. Under the catchphrase, the survival of the fittest, a competitive, ruthless, and selfish view of human nature has been mistakenly attributed to the Darwinian perspective. A deeper look at Charles Darwin's work, however, reveals a very different picture. He proposed that natural selection favored those who have the ability to be affected by the feelings of others, and the most successful societies had succeeded because of their sympathetic instincts for those communities which included the greatest number of the most sympathetic members would flourish best. Likewise, philosophers including Adam Smith, David Hume, Edmund Burke, proposed that the ability to perceive others people's suffering is a key determinant of how societies hang together or fall apart. Although our level of scientific and technological advancement is unprecedented and has brought many material benefits, people are feeling increasingly isolated, anxious, and depressed, and lacking a sense of meaning and purpose. Learning to cope. Hope. There are plenty of reasons to be empathetic, and there is no debating it is an asset. It can also drain your energy. Empathy makes your life more compassionate, insightful, and full. It doesn't have to be so overwhelming if you set intentional boundaries. Evaluate. First, ask yourself, is this symptom or emotion mine or someone else's? It could be both. If the emotion such as fear or anger is yours, gently confront what's causing it on your own or with professional help. If it's not yours, try to pinpoint the obvious generator. Move away. Distance yourself by at least 20 feet from the suspected source. See if you feel relief. Don't worry about offending strangers, and don't hesitate to change seats if you feel a sense of dis-ease imposing on you. Know your vulnerable points. Each of us has a body part that is more vulnerable to absorbing others' stress. Scan your body to determine yours. Is it your gut? Your neck? Do you get sore throats? Headaches? At the onset of symptoms in these areas, place your palm there and keep sending loving kindness to that area to soothe discomfort. For long-standing depression or pain, use this method daily to strengthen yourself. It's comforting and builds a sense of safety and optimism. Surrender to your breath. If you suspect you are picking up on someone else's symptoms, concentrate on your breath for a few moments. This is centering and connects you to your own power. Practice guerrilla meditation. To counter emotional or physical distress, act fast and meditate for a few minutes. Do this at home, at work, at parties or conferences, or take refuge in the bathroom. If it's public, close the stall. Meditate there. Calm yourself. Focus on positivity and love. Set healthy limits and boundaries. Control how much time you spend listening to stressful people, and learn to say no. Remember, no is a complete sentence. And visualize protection around you. Visualize an envelope of white light around your entire body. With extremely toxic people, visualize a fierce black jaguar patrolling and protecting your energy field against intruders. Develop X-ray vision. The spaces between the vertebrae in your lower back or lumbar spine are conducive to eliminating pain from the body. It's helpful to learn to mindfully direct pain out of these spaces by visualizing it leaving your body. Say goodbye to pain as it blends with the giant energy matrix of life. Take a bath or shower. A quick way to dissolve stress is to immerse yourself in water. Let your bath be your sanctuary after a busy day. It washes away everything from bus exhaustion to long hours of air travel to pesky symptoms I have taken on from others. Soaking in mineral springs divinely purifies all that ails. Keep practicing these strategies. By protecting yourself and your space, you can create a magical, safe bubble around you that nurtures you while simultaneously driving negative people away. Don't panic if you occasionally pick up pain or some other nasty symptom. It happens. This will make you feel safer, healthier, and your sensitivities can blossom. Developing empathy, a purposeful skill development. Take care of yourself. Take the time to rest, eat well, get exercise. If you take care of yourself, everything else falls into place. Find your own clarity. The better you are in tune with your own feelings, the easier it is to distinguish between yours and theirs.